Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Budget and Finance Committee. And we welcome everybody who's listening online and everybody here in the room. Thank you for coming on this beautiful Tuesday morning. We are here meeting in Windrock, Arizona in the Budget and Finance Committee room. Today is February 21st, and it is 10:01. And I'd like to call the meeting to order. Could we have roll call this morning?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, and Budget Finance Committee members and staff, and we want to begin roll call for the Budget Finance Committee meeting here at the February 21st, 2023. Honorable Thompson Harris.
Here.
Honorable Thompson Harris is present. Honorable Carl Russell Slater. Honorable Carl Russell Slater. Honorable Sustaining.
Here.
Honorable Sustaining is present. Honorable Anderson is Crowdy. Honorable Anderson is Crowdy. Honorable Norman Impegay.
Yo.
Honorable Norman Impegay. Lamardo Estorette.
Here.
Thank you. Honorable Lamardo Estorette is present. Honorable Carl Slater. Honorable Anderson is Crowdy. Madam Chair, we've got 4 members present on roll call, 2 members not voting. Madam Chair.
Thank you this morning for taking the roll call. Good morning again to everybody listening online who's joining us at 10:03, and we called the meeting to order at 10:01. And I'd like to ask our esteemed colleagues of Budget and Finance if we have any volunteers for the invocation today. I'll say a quick prayer this morning. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day to come and serve the Navajo people. We pray today that the involvement today with Budget and Finance pushes forward productivity and also change for our people. We also pray this morning for the President of the Navajo Nation, the Vice President, the Chief Justice of the Navajo Nation, and the Speaker of the Navajo Nation Council. We pray for each of the chairs of each of the committees and all of the council delegates and all of the leadership, God. But most importantly, we pray for our people that today you may meet them with grace, love, and kindness, God. And we just pray today during Budget and Finance that we gain the knowledge that we need to continue to make decisions to make change for our people, God. And we just thank you for another day to come before you and to serve the Navajo people. Pray these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Okay. Item number 2, would we like colleagues of Budget and Finance would open up the floor to recognize any guests or visiting officials? Okay. Item number 3. Thank you, Delegate Azarette. I do have my LDA starting today. My LDA is Brooklyn Cook. For everyone listening online, I'll be sharing her information shortly so that further contact information can be shared if you need to contact me. And her name is Brooklyn Cook. She's from Crown Point, New Mexico, and she previously worked for the legislative branch. So thank you, Brooklyn, for being here with us today. Okay, next on the agenda is item number 3, review and adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Budget and Finance Committee. This is the proposed agenda of the Budget and Finance Committee of the Navajo Nation Council, February 21st, 2023, regular meeting. The proposed agenda of the Budget and Finance Committee of the 25th Navajo Nation Council February 21st, 2023, regular meeting via teleconference. Presiding Honorable Chandine Parrish, Chairperson. Honorable Carl R. Slater, Vice Chairperson. Budget and Finance Committee Conference Room, one drawing and one resolution. One, combination order rules on vacation. Two, recognize guests and visiting officials. Three, review and adopt the agenda. Four, review and adopt the journal. There is one journal, February 7th, 2023. Five, receive report A, status of the procurement code amendments presented by Latanya Johnson, Assistant Attorney Justice, with no notice, Assistant Attorney General Tax Unit, with Audra Stanso, Attorney. Report B, changes to the budgeting process, including a two-year budget presented by Dominic Biel, Director, and the next acting budgeting officer, Office of Management and Budget. C, freezing funds and consolidation of trust funds by Elizabeth Gay, General Controller, with Robert Woolley, Accounting Manager. Controller. 6, old business. 9, 7, new business A, scheduling orientation. 2023 to March 3rd, 2028, close of session, written announcement, adjournment. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rico. Colleagues, do we have any?
Madam Chair, you need a motion first.
Can we get a motion for adopting today's agenda? Delegate Begay motion. Any 1 second? Delegate Azaritt second. Thank you. Colleagues, do we have any amendments to the agenda today? Yes, Delegate Jim.
Madam Chair, I have an amendment for the agenda. Out of respect for our colleague, Vice Chair Slater, since he's not on the call, I know that he was championing the reports for item number B under receiving reports and item number C. Since Vice Chair Slater is not present here with us, I'll go ahead and ask that those be moved to the next meeting. That's my motion.
Thank you, Delegate Damon. Do we have a second for the amendment? Delegate Azaritt, second. Could we call for a vote? Do we have any questions or comments? Calling a second time for questions or comments regarding the amendment to move item B and C to next Budget and Finance Committee's agenda. I see no comments or questions. Okay. Delegate Azaritt?
Madam Chair, I'd like to know if these items on B and C can be brought to an orientation.
Definitely. We will, yes, Delegate Azaritt, we will make these topics that we talked about during orientation. Any further questions or comments regarding Delegate Damon's amendment? I see no questions or comments. Can we call for a vote?
Yes, Madam Chair, roll call vote on amendment number 1. Honorable Martha Stewart, how do you vote?
Ring.
Honorable Martha Stewart. Honorable Maureen Virginia, how do you vote? Honorable Maureen Virginia Green. Honorable Evelyn Party, how do you vote? Honorable Evelyn Party, how do you vote? Honorable Seth David, how do you vote?
Vote green.
Honorable Seth David votes. Honorable Carl R. Slater, how do you vote? Carl R. Slater, how do you vote? Madam Chair, we have 3 members voting in the affirmative, 0 opposing, and 2.
Thank you for the roll call vote on the amendments. And how are we, no? Do we do
Any other questions?
the amendment? All right.
Go back on the main motion.
The main motion is review and adopt the agenda. Does anybody have any further questions regarding the main motion? Calling a second time for comments or questions. I see none. Could we do a vote on a second reading of the agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have one amendment. Amendment number 1 is to delete items 5B and 5C and move those to the next, Budget and Finance Committee meeting or to the, address during the orientation that is scheduled for next week. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rico, for the second reading. Could we call for a roll call vote?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll call vote on the main motion. Honorable Lamardo, how do you vote?
Green.
And the Honorable Lamardo,
Green.
thank you. Honorable Lamardo, how do you vote? Honorable Everton Bakari, how do you vote? Honorable Everton Bakari, how do you vote? Honorable Smith Damon, how do you vote?
Vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Smith Damon votes green. Carl R. Slater, how do you vote? Honorable Carl R. Slater, how do you vote? Madam Chair, we have 3 members voting in affirmative, or opposing, and 2 members not voting.
Thank you, Ramona, for the roll call vote this morning, and thank you, colleagues. We are going to item number 4, review and adopt the journal for February 7th, 2023.
Madam Chair, I motion to accept the journal as is.
Thank you, Delegate Damon, and Delegate Azeret seconds the motion. Colleagues, do we have any discussion on the adoption of the journal? A second time. I see none. Could we get a vote on the adoption of the journal?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll call vote on the approval of the journal. Honorable Lamardo, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Lamardo, votes green. Honorable Norman McGay, how do you vote? Thank you. Honorable Norman McGay votes green. Honorable Everton Bakari, how do you vote? Honorable Everton Bakari, how do you vote? Honorable Smith Damon, how do you vote?
Vote green.
Thank you. Honorable McGay votes. Honorable Carl R. Slater, how do you vote? Honorable Carl R. Slater, how do you vote? Madam Chair, we have 3 members voting in the opposing, members not voting, Madam Chair not voting.
Thank you. Thank you again for calling for the vote. Colleagues, let's move on to item number 5, receive report. Item A is status of procurement code amendments presented by LaToya B. Johnson, Assistant Attorney General, and the Department of Justice, both Mr. Mel Rodas, Assistant Attorney General with the Tax Unit, and Ajay Donso, Attorney. And I believe Ms. LaToya Johnson also referred to her colleague Catherine Belowski. Do we have any of the presenters online this morning? Do we have Ms. Catherine Belowski online?
Oh, good morning, Chairwoman. This is Catherine Belzowski from Navajo Nation Department of Justice.
Good morning. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. I believe an email was sent to the Department of Justice in regarding the Budget and Finance request to have a general update on the status of the procurement code amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman. I'm prepared to give a report on the status if you're ready.
Yes, please. You
Thank
have
you.
20 minutes this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully it won't take that long. Just so back during the 2022, the Navajo Nation Department of Justice was tasked with reviewing the Procurement Act and regulations and recommending updates to the council. And under the last administration, we have started that process, and we continue that today. We have been reviewing the act and the regulations. We have some proposed amendments. We're kind of in the process right now of just going over what has been reviewed and been proposed prior. And then once we finalize that, we're going to be presenting that to the committee for consideration. But I think at this time, we're still in the, I don't know exactly which phase, the redrafting. We do have, I believe, a old version was provided to the legislative advisor by my colleague, Mr. Rodas. Since that version, we've currently been updating it, and we have a more comprehensive revision of both the act and the regulations so they can work harmoniously together. I will say also, we are currently working with the Business Regulatory Department on Navajo Business Opportunity Act amendments. They're going to be meeting in March, they're having a work session in March to go over amendments to that act. Ideally, we would like to present both the NABOA amendments and the Procurement Act and Regulation amendments all as one to the committee, because both those acts work so closely together and really have to be amended at the same time in order for them to have their full effect. So hopefully after the work session in March with the Business Regulatory Department, we'll be able to present all the amendments for both acts to the committee for consideration. And that is my report.
Thank you, Ms. Belowski, for your report this morning. Colleagues, do we have any questions for the Department of Justice? Yes. Ms.
We need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Colleagues, can we get a motion on the report from the Department of Justice?
Motion.
Delegate Damon motion, second by Delegate Azaritt. Okay. Colleagues, do we have any questions for the Department of Justice?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And, members of the Budget and Finance Committee, you said something about draft. Are we gonna see a draft, at least, what's going on with this, subject? And the other question was, I don't know if we have to mention it to Business Regulatory, of their work session, in March. Would we be invited to their work session just to listen in, or would that be a conflict of interest for us to be listening in? That's my question.
Thank you, Delegate Azaritt. I'll turn the time back over to the Department of Justice.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I believe the two questions were, is there a draft for review, and can the committee attend the BRD's work session in March? We don't have a draft ready for review because we do want to get the NABOA amendments. We want to get the NABOA amendments completed prior to providing a draft for the Procurement Act, because, like I said, they really do have to work together. Otherwise, and this is the issue, they don't currently work together, and so there's a lot of issues to that. So we want to make sure that whatever we have on the procurement side is going to work with what's going on the NABOA side, so they can be useful to Navajo businesses. And then in regards to listening in on the work session, I don't think there is a conflict issue. I would obviously defer that to your counsel. But if members of the committee are interested in attending, I would suggest reaching out to Mr. Nota Silversmith. He's the department manager at BRD, and he's the one who has been working to set up the work session.
Thank you, Ms. Belowski. Do we have any other follow-up questions? Delegate Damon has a question.
Thank you very much. Again, good morning, Ms. Belowski. Thank you for being on the call. This is Seth Damon. I had a question. Actually, my first recommendation, Belowski, can you explain to the committee what the business regulatory amendments are, or those recommendations, and then can you explain what NABOA is? Because we have new committee members here, and acronyms, whatever, that they don't understand, they might not understand, and I might not remember how to say it for myself. Thank you. Because I think we need to be more in-depth on those recommendations. First, that's my first thought, and then I guess give an overview on those two, and then I'll come back for a question.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Delegate Damon. Ms. Lasky, could you respond to that?
Yeah, no problem. So the Procurement Act and the regulations are the rules that govern how the Navajo Nation and the chapters procure for services or goods. And so it's an act that specifically covers just the Navajo Nation government and how we, hire contractors, how we buy paper, everything of that nature. It regulates that and tries to make sure that we're doing it in an open and fair manner, so we're not giving preference, to specific individuals or businesses. What NABOA does, the Navajo Business Opportunity Act, is it's an act that applies to all businesses operating on the Navajo Nation, and it gives preference in contracting to Navajo what we call priority 1 and 2 businesses. So priority 1 is a business that's 100% Navajo owned, and a priority 2 is a business that's 51% Navajo owned. So the reason it's important to have these two acts, even though they are different standalone acts that were created at different times, work together, is because in order for when the Navajo Nation procures for like construction, right, they have to apply NABOA. And so this is one of those things where no matter who's procuring, in theory, whether it be an enterprise, whether it be McDonald's or, Department of Water, they're supposed to be applying NABOA. And so for the Navajo Nation government, in order to be able to do that in a way that's streamlined, efficient, the Procurement Act, NABOA really need to work together as harmoniously. And right now, because they were drafted at different points in history, there's, some of the definitions don't necessarily line up. There's some issues regarding that. And so that's what we're trying to really harmonize. And I think, Mr. Silversmith shop, who's responsible under NABOA for overseeing its implementation, have really identified some of these places where there's, inconsistencies between the act and between the Procurement Act and NABOA, and they want to try to make it so that they can work better together. Yeah.
Can you expand on the term NABOA?
Navajo Business Opportunity Act, providing Navajo businesses first opportunity to receive contracts on the nation.
Great, thank you. And do you happen to have a copy of these regulations? And could you send them to the Budget and Finance Committee?
It's the act. NABOA doesn't have regulations. It's just the act. It's in Title V. It's Title V, Section 201. It starts at Section 201. I'm happy to send that to the committee. I have that, and I can send it over for you guys to review. But it's just basically what's in the code. It last time was amended. It was in 2005. So whatever. I think what's in the code is the code books right now is the current version. There were regulations that were supposed to be implemented or supposed to be passed to implement NABOA, but those have never been drafted.
Thank you. Colleagues, do we have any other further questions for Ms. Lasky regarding the procurement code? Yes, Delegate Damon?
Thank you very much. I guess, thank you again, Ms. Lasky, for that, update so far. I guess, my thought is going back into, I guess, the timeline of what the former Budget and Finance Committee did. And you indicated that working together with, your office and back in the 23rd Council, I know that the then Budget and Finance Committee worked with Ms. LaTanya Johnson, and in that time frame, there was a draft that was completed, and I think that's the one that Ms. Naka is referring to. And in that, there was numerous, I do believe, 3 or 4 different public hearings that I do believe that were mandated by law in order for us to go ahead and amend that. And I know the staff was here, part of that discussion then here as well. My first question is, from that time frame till now, I know that those public hearings did take place, and is it a requirement to still continue to have those public hearings again after these new recommendations are coming back from not only the Navajo Nation Department of Justice on the overall Procurement Act amendments as your recommendations, or if this work session from the Business Regulatory Office is gonna come back and have more recommendations too as well. From that point, is it a requirement to go ahead and hear again from the public on any further recommendations, or does what the 23rd Council completed when they had their budget, or those public hearings, does that take, I guess, will that work as those recommendations? Or does that meet the requirements for any further amendments moving forward? That's my first question. And the second one is the amendments that were recommended, I guess, over the past 4 years in the 24th Navajo Nation Council. I'm sure that there's an overview on that. Now, if there's a more in-depth conversation that we need to have, I think that at that time when the draft will be presented to us, we can go ahead and ask further questions. And I do think, Madam Chair, that's probably going to take a whole day just to go over those, all those amendments from the recommendation from the Navajo Nation Department of Justice, especially if those other organizations are going to be putting forth those amendments. But that's just my question right now is once these recommendations are completed, or does the Navajo Nation Budget Finance Committee have to take any action and have any further public hearings prior to those recommendations being published? Or is this something that we need to do, that we can do after, or is this something that we don't need to even have any further public hearings? That's my question. Thank you very much, Ms. Lozowski.
Ms. Bilowski, could you address Delegate Damon's question?
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Damon. I think the amendment or the draft, I guess, that was done in 2019, I just want to note is not a finalized draft. The draft, I think, that was provided to the committee by my colleague, it only goes so far on the Procurement Act. It's not a completed document, if that makes sense. So what we've done is we've gone through the entire act now and made edits. And we've also I would say the 2019 amendments don't even touch the regulations. As you guys know, there's the Procurement Act, and then there's the regulations that implement the act. So we've gone through and we've completed the review of the act, and we've also redrafted the regulations. So the regulations would work. So we would present those at the same time rather than having the act go first and then the regulations later. I think it makes more sense to have them both considered by the council and then the committee, BNF committee. There's no requirement for public comment. I believe that's correct, and I think your legal counsel can let me know if I'm wrong. But I think there's no requirement that you guys have public comments for the procurement amendments. It's just something that if you choose to do, you can do it. I know for NABOA, the NABOA amendment, the Business Regulatory Department has already had listening sessions, not on what they've drafted, but just to hear the Navajo businesses' concerns on how the Navajo Business Opportunity Act is currently working. So they've done those, I think, if not last year, definitely the year before. So they've already had a couple listening sessions where they solicited public comments on how businesses thought NABOA should be amended. I don't know, I haven't talked to them on if they plan on having any further public comments, once they have a draft, working draft, but there doesn't appear to be any requirements in the code that says they have to have those public comments. I think they're just doing those as kind of a courtesy and to try to make sure Navajo businesses feel like their voice is being heard. And I think, Delegate Damon, I hope that addresses all your questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bilowski. I'd like to ask our legal counsel, for their opinion on the requirement for public hearings regarding the Procurement Act. Do you have anyone online?
This is Lurleen with the Office of Legislative Counsel. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not aware of any requirement for public hearings for any amendments or the like for the procurement code or the regulations. So I think Ms. Belzowski is correct on this. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll turn the time over.
Madam Chair, this is Dana. Can I add something, please?
Yes, Ms. Bob Ross, you can add.
Thank you. So I agree with Ms. Velosky and Ms. Tapaye that there's no requirement for public hearings in the various acts. But I'm going to research this as soon as I land somewhere. But I believe that during the 23rd Council, there was a procurement subcommittee established by the Budget and Finance Committee. And when they did that, when they established it, that was where the public hearing requirements came in. And as far as I can tell, based on what Delegate Damon said, those requirements have been completed. If I find anything different, I will let you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bob Ross. Delegate Damon has further comments and questions.
Okay, I don't remember Ms. Lazowski. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Mr. Pagi, for weighing in on my question. There was something, the reason why is that we were recommended to have public hearings back then. And I don't know if that was something that was in the Supreme Court case on the decision for Inaba too. I think, is that the name, Inaba, the Inaba Construction Company? Is that correct? It might be in that Supreme Court case. And going back to that Supreme Court case, when Inaba decision came down from the Navajo Nation Supreme Court, it was basically a mess for business regulatory and for Navajo Nation, I guess the procurement code to put those amendments or put those recommendations from what the Supreme Court stated in their opinion. Now, has Department of Justice or the Business Regulatory Office since then have any recommendations on how to implement those procurement recommendations that came out in the Supreme Court decision? That's my follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Damon. I'm going to divert the question to Department of Justice.
Thank you, Speaker. The Inaba decision is actually fascinating. Ms. Tapahi, I'm sure, can regale us on her arguments before the Supreme Court on it. But actually, the Inaba decision is being, I think, implemented pretty streamlined right now. Really what that decision did is it said that Navajo preference, basically the Navajo Business Opportunity Act, has to be applied to all procurement done by the nation. Because what was happening in that case is that there was, and there's still, the language still reads in Title 12, Section 346, an exemption to applying Navajo preference in business contracting to architects and engineers and land surveyors. So that's what the nation had been doing at the time that case came out. And what the Supreme Court said was there can be no exemption from NABOA, basically. And so you have to apply Navajo preference in some manner whenever you're the Navajo Nation, you need to apply Navajo preference in some manner when you're contracting with businesses. And the Department of Water Resource in that case hadn't applied any preference. And so that's where the Supreme Court came back and was like, basically do it again. And so I think that currently what the Business Regulatory Department is doing is that they're telling all entities, but definitely Navajo Nation entities, that when they're procuring for services, whether it be architect or land surveyors or construction, that there has to be some sort of Navajo preference applied in the awarding of that contract. Several years after NABOA, they were doing points. They were awarding points to Navajo businesses. So if you were a Navajo business, priority 1, you got 10 points. Recently, they've changed that based on just some, kind of further research and implementation issues. So now what's happening is that every time the Navajo Nation procures for a construction contractor, what the departments are supposed to be doing is they're supposed to be opening all the priority 1 proposals first. And if none of them are qualified, then they can go to priority 2s, and then they can go to non-Navajos. So it's currently being implemented. The decision, we're currently attempting to implement it. Whether we're doing it in the way that the Supreme Court is satisfactory with, is anyone's guess. We haven't received any more cases or decisions from the Supreme Court to tell us yes or no, but we're pretty confident that by reviewing priority 1 proposals first and determining if they're qualified would stand up. We hope will stand up if we ever get challenged before the Supreme Court. So that's what we're doing. And I think, really where, that's what the business regulatory is doing. But I think really where we're hoping to get that clarification with these amendments is really to clarify, how are people supposed to be applying preference to proposal openings, to bid openings, in these various forms of contracting that the nation and enterprises are doing. Because I think there's still, because of the ambiguities on how the law is written, there's still a lot of questions about how to apply it. And obviously BRD does the best they can to try to provide that guidance to all Navajo departments that need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bilowski, for your response. Colleagues, do we have any follow-up questions? Yes, Delegate Damon.
Thank you very much. With those recommendations, I guess, or just a follow-up on the Innabug case, is there any recommendations from the Navajo Nation Department of Justice to correct some of those, recommendations that are guessed the opinion from the Supreme Court? And then the second question is has the Navajo Nation Department of Justice, or at least know of the Business Regulatory Office sitting down with the FRF office and also with Federal Programs Department for the contract services there under the Office of the Controller? Because our federal programs are held differently than all the Navajo Nation funds that are obligated under the general funds and everything that's in the Title 12 appropriation. I know that the federal funds are a little different as well, so that's another question, I guess, just to have a couple of those questions answered. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Damon. I'm going to turn the time back over to the Department of Justice.
Thank you, Delegate Damon. For the federal funds, I don't know if my colleague, Ms. Johnson's on the line. Her office is the one that does a lot of the negotiating with the 638 contracts in regards to, in regards to the inclusion of, Navajo preference. There's usually always an Indian preference default in all federal contracting. And I think, so I would, if she's on the line, I would definitely defer to her expertise in regards to 638 contracts. I will say that if they are able to negotiate, Navajo preference into them, we obviously will apply, that's when we apply NAVOA to those contracts. Our law, the way the law is currently written, is that there is an exemption in NAVOA for federal contracts that don't allow for specifically Navajo preference to be included. There's an Indian preference provision. I believe it's in Title 5, Section 2. I want to say 204, but it may be 203. So the Navajo Nation has considered that in the drafting of its laws. And so if someone, let's say we do have federal funds that don't allow us to apply Navajo preference, it's okay for those entities to apply Indian preference and still be in compliance with the law. And I don't know regarding the conversations between BRD and the FRF office. I know there have been conversations, but I haven't been in them, so I'm not sure what the discussions have been between those two departments.
Thank you, Ms. Bilowski. Do you know which section of the Department of Justice has been having those conversations?
I think my colleague, Mr. Rodas, has been advising FRF office in regards to, I know he's been advising them regarding to the application of the procurement to certain FRF projects. And I would say that, there's nothing in our laws as long as we are doing the if our departments are being required to follow procurement as outlined for competitive bids and proposals, there's nothing that would exempt them from applying Navajo preference in business contracting when they're doing those procurements. Does that make, I'm sorry, it's kind of a confusing answer. Just to simplify it, if the program if the position of the FRF office is that the departments have to follow the competitive procurement process, then our normal Navajo preference for businesses should kick in when they're doing that procurement process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lasky. I am going to ask if Ms. Johnson is on the line. Ms. Latoya Johnson? Latoya Johnson, I apologize. Okay, that does not sound like she's on the line. Is Mr. Mel Rodas on the line?
Good morning, Madam Chair. This is Mel Rodas.
Good morning. Okay, colleagues, we have Mr. Mel Rodas, and we also have Ms. Catherine Bolowski from the Department of Justice on the line regarding the Procurement Act. Do we have any other further questions for Department of Justice?
I do.
Delegate Damon has more questions.
Thank you. I have a question to Mr. Rodas, I guess. Mel, good morning. Again, it's great to hear your voice. But I'd rather have you sitting over here with us today, but it's okay, Mel. Mel, I guess my question to you is going back to what we're trying to do right now is help on the Navajo Nation programs. And we did hear from Mr. Completero from the Navajo Nation, I guess the director of the Physical Recovery Fund office, and he has recommendations that he's putting forth to streamline the process and help assist in better establishing, I guess, better fiscal drawdowns or even fiscal responsibility and helping assist in that process. I'm wondering, since you're working with the FRF office, Mel, have you or anybody from the Navajo Nation Department of Justice put together from what their recommendations are into a possible amendment that we can go ahead and put forth into the procurement code or any other regulation document that can go ahead and help assist in Mr. Potero's shop streamlining their responsibility of over almost $2 billion. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Damon. Mr. Rodas, could you respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Honorable Damon. I appreciate the question. So in terms of recommendations for streamlining FRF procurements, one thing that I could recommend is having a section on, and maybe there already is in the new draft that Ms. Belzowski is working on, but having a section on micro purchases. So under the uniform guidance and in 2 CFR 200 Part D, the federal procurement standards, micro purchases can be normally are up to $10,000, but can be up to $50,000. And so with micro purchases, you don't have to have the same strict level of competition with a normal procurement. So that would really facilitate having less competition. Obviously, under Navajo law, we would still have to have Navajo preference if it was a micro purchase, but that's one thing. Another thing that OOC has brought up, and that Madam Controller Begay has brought up, is the use of the purchase card. So under the federal procurement standards, you can use a purchase card if it's up to the threshold for micro purchases for services, purchase of services. And under OOC's current financial policies that are approved by Budget and Finance Committee, you cannot use a purchase card for services, regardless of if it's under the threshold for a micro purchase. So that would be another thing. In terms of emergency procurement, we do have to follow the standards we have to follow the federal procurement standards for emergency procurement. And under Treasury guidance for fiscal recovery funds, there was an FAQ that stated that the existence of COVID alone is not an emergency circumstance that would allow for across the board emergency procurement using all FRF funds. That you would have to do a case-by-case determination for every procurement. If this particular procurement qualifies as an emergency, such as there wouldn't have to be competition for each procurement. So if you look at the Procurement Act, at Section 370, it speaks to compliance with federal requirements. And I'll just read it. Where procurement involves expenditure of federal assistance or contract funds, the Division of Finance Purchasing Department shall comply with such federal law and authorized regulations which are mandatorily applicable and which are not presently reflected in this act. And that just means we follow the Navajo Nation Procurement Act. But if we're expending federal funds for a procurement, if the federal procurement standards are more strict or more specific than what we have in the Navajo Nation Procurement Act, then we'll follow the federal procurement standards for procurement with those federal funds. So unfortunately, there's not a way to get around the federal procurement standards when we're using FRF or other federal funds, but this provision, the 370, is what says, even if there's something missing in the Navajo Nation Procurement Act, if we're using federal funds, use federal procurement standards. But in terms of, back to the question, in terms of streamlining the process for FRF, I think having a threshold for micro purchases and then considering the possibility of being able to use a purchase card for micro purchases of services. Thank you, Honorable Damon, and thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Mr. Rodas, back to Delegate Damon's, I believe part of his question was asking if there was any progress in developing any amendments to the Procurement Act regarding the FRF suggestions. Is there any progress?
I apologize for missing that part of the question. The Tax and Finance Unit of DOJ represents the FRF office. We can speak with the FRF office about what their specific recommendations are for amendments to the Procurement Act and regulations, but I haven't I haven't combined efforts with the FRF office and the Economic and Community Development Unit of DOJ that Ms. Belzowski leads. And ECDU is the one that's working on drafting amendments at this point for DOJ. But I can convene with them in the future and make sure that there's communication between TFU, the FRF office, and ECDU with regard to recommended streamlining the process for using federal funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodas. I believe Delegate Damon has a follow-up question.
Okay, thank you. So my follow-up question, Mel, is on the micro purchase, I guess, recommendation. Those amendments, well, what I'm getting is that it's not being worked on. And that's what the FRF office is requesting to do so that they can go ahead and streamline their services. So Madam Chair, I guess what we could do is when we have that meeting with the FRF office, have Tom Botero, because maybe Tom Botero has not, he's probably put that as a recommendation, but he probably has not submitted those recommendations to DOJ so that they could start working on that portion of it. The second one is, I think that the P-card, recommendation to go ahead and utilize our P-card services for any federal program, that's always been discussed. I know that, there was at some point, pushback too as well in the past from the controller's office to do that. I don't know, I don't remember why, but I think that's something that we could definitely ask Tom Botero to put that request into as well, or even us to go ahead and work together with our own legislative council to amend that policy, because that's under the Navajo Nation Controller's Office plan of operation that we need to be amended, and that it comes back here to Budget and Finance Committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Damon, for your insight. The Budget and Finance Committee looks forward to learning and working with the FRF office and our partners across the board. Colleagues, do we have any other further questions for the Department of Justice regarding the status of the Procurement Act? Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My follow-up question then, back to Mr. Wazowski, is I think Mr. Mel Rodas did pose a question to yourself if there was any movement or recommendations on any of the, I'm not too sure if it was on any policies that were recommended or included into those amendments that are being drafted right now. And then my follow-up is, can we get a timeline in writing from yourself to state, okay, this is what's going to happen, this is currently what's being developed and worked on, this is what's going to be happening next month in March, and after that, these are the timelines of what we need to do after that in order to package that all together. So we're looking at maybe April or early May in order for us to go ahead and start drafting the legislation. I think that's the overall goal that the Budget and Finance Committee is trying to get to, so that we know that the dollars need to be spent out here, and the sooner that we make these recommendations and these amendments, the sooner it's easier for Navajo Nation programs to start spending these funds and drawing down these federal dollars. So that, I think that's an overall request from myself, Madam Chair. If there could be a timeline in place to show not only where we're at, but also keep us all accountable, especially if we need to be acting on anything that the Budget and Finance Committee needs to do in order to make sure that these actions are completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Delegate Seth Damon. Yes, we'll request that of the Department of Justice to create a timeline from the inception of the Procurement Act to today's date and for future plans, because I think it's important for all committee members and everybody involved regarding the procurement process, because we want to hold each other accountable to the Navajo people, and you know, it is important to look at the entire timeline. But I'm going to yield the time back over to Ms. Belowski to address Delegate Damon's question and also some of his comments.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I think I really appreciate Delegate Damon's comments. I think with, you know, there's so many things that are priorities for us. So it's really helpful when the committees and the council kind of, you know, let us know what they want us to push up front. I think that we're looking at having, like I said, that BRD work session the week of April 12th, or it's not April 12th, sorry, March 13th. I think it's March 14th and 15th are the actual dates of the work session. I think that we're going to be able to, you know, I think after that, it's really, you know, when the committee would like to have things presented to them. If you guys, it's helpful when you guys do set those dates. Like if you want to have an update maybe 2 weeks after that, we would be happy to like provide that. And that also keeps us accountable so that we can make sure that we're, you know, moving things timely. I know that we had a dream in January to have everything packaged for you guys for spring council. I don't know if we're going to meet that dream, but that was our internal dream, I would say. And so any meetings that you guys want to have or propose, we're happy to try to meet those deadlines and at least provide updates on where we are in the process.
Thank you, Ms. Walowski. We'd also like to request in writing the timeline for what you have planned so far, but I think we have a consensus on the report 2 weeks after your work session.
Okay. Will do. Thank you, Speaker. Or thank you, Chairwoman.
For Ms. Walowski or Mr. Rodas? Yes, Doug Azaritt.
Good morning, this is Lamardo Azaritt. I just got a little comment about, business regulatory. I want to make sure business regulatory is involved in a lot of this too. I don't want them to be on the side and not knowing what's going on. I'd like to see them, be involved in it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Azaritt, for your comments to the Department of Justice. Do you have any other questions for the Department of Justice? Great. It appears that we have no other questions or comments. Actually, Delegate Damon has a question or comment.
Since there's no more questions on the report itself, I'm going to use my time since you're on the call, Ms. Brzezowski. As you know, so I'm bringing up something from my region, and the CSM Powerline project for the community, the Chechuk facility in Baca Pruitt. I know you're working on that with Navajo Nation Division of Community Development. Division of Community Development says they keep reaching out to you and you're not responding back to them and them trying to set up a meeting. I don't know how true that is because I try to get a hold of DCD themselves and they don't want to respond to me either. So I would really like to set up a meeting with you, Ms. Brzezowski, on that power line project. Just FYI, thank you.
Thank you, Damon. I'm willing to yield the time to Ms. Brzezowski.
Thank you, Delegate Damon. I actually did respond to CPMD. I believe they were working to set up a meeting. NTUA responded that they're available, I think, on Friday. I'll go back and check the emails and I'll make sure that someone gets back to you. But I believe that we were trying to hold a meeting on Friday to provide you that update. And just to give you a very generalized update, the reason we've been having so many issues is Continental Divide has decided it doesn't want to contract directly with the nation for some reason. And so we're having NTUA step in to do a subrecipient agreement for those funds. And then they'll work with Continental Divide as needed to get that project completed. But we did send the agreement over to NTUA. NTUA has talked to Continental Divide. They seem to be on board. And then we've provided the subrecipient agreement to NTUA for them for those funds as well. So, but we'll provide you more detailed update hopefully on Friday, and I'll make sure that Shayla gets that invite out to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walowski, and thank you to the Department of Justice for providing the report on the status of the procurement code amendment. Colleagues, I'm going to call one more time for questions or comments regarding the amendment. I see none, and I'd like to call for a vote to accept the report.
Madam Chair, we'll call vote on accepting Honorable Lamardo Azaritt, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Lamardo Azaritt votes green. Honorable Norman MBJ, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Norman MBJ votes green. Honorable Everton and Rock County, how do you vote? Honorable Everton and Rock County, how do you vote? Honorable Seth Damon, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Seth Damon votes green. Honorable Carl R. Slater, how do you vote? Carl R. Slater, how do you vote? Madam Chair, we have 3 members voting in the affirmative or opposing. Madam Chair, not voting. Madam Chair?
Thank you, for doing the roll call vote. For the record, Vice Chair, Delegate Carl Slater is excused for today.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'm motioning to amend the agenda. A motion to add on, under 7, new business, item number B is, scheduling a meeting with, the Physical Recovery Fund Office, and the reason why is because I remember one of the biggest priorities that I think it was consensus was us trying to say that we want to meet with them weekly, so I'd like to schedule a meeting with the FRF office. And that's why I motion to add that on as item new business B, or 7. Meeting, yeah. Because I think the committee, well, that's a discussion we'll have at that time, because, I think, Madam Chair, the question was to have them meeting weekly, and I just, I don't see that we're having a meeting, and then in hindsight, under listening to what the Department of Justice has indicated, it seems like Tom Otero is putting together recommendations, but he's not executing those recommendations to the Department of Justice or even to Ledge Council, because I think Department of Justice might be overloaded to some point. I'm not saying our Ledge Council is too as well, but I think helping assist in that overall, I guess, cohesiveness to make sure that we can help assist Tom Otero's shop draw down these funds faster. So that's the reason why. And I just want to ask Tom those questions on the record this week.
Thank you, Delegate Damas. Do we have a second? Delegate Begay seconds the motion. Do we have any other further comments or questions regarding the motion to amend the agenda? No questions or comments? We do a roll call vote for the amendment on the agenda.
It's on Madam Chair, roll call vote on amendment number 2. Honorable Lamar Esmeralda, how do you vote?
Great.
Honorable Lamar Esmeralda, speaking. Honorable Lauren Indicating, how do you vote? Honorable Lauren Indicating, agree. Honorable Everton is Black Party, how do you vote? Honorable Everton is Black Party, how do you vote? Honorable Seth David, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Seth David votes green. Honorable Carl Slater is excused. Madam Chair, we have 3 members voting in the affirmative or opposing, and 1 member not.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Let's move on to item 6, old business, none. Item 7 is new business A, scheduling orientation for week of February 27th, 2023, and to March 3rd, 2023. Colleagues, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Delegate Taylor, motion. Do we have a second? Delegate Begay, seconds motion. Colleagues, I'm going to open it up to time for discussion for orientation. On the agenda, it says for the week of February 27th to the 3rd. I know we have 2 members who are not present. For the members who are here, I wanted to know if how your schedule looks, because I've cleared this time so that we can sit down and work with all of our oversight, the departments and divisions and the offices that we oversee, also some of our offices under the legislative branch and the enterprises. So I think it's going to take a few days to discuss their priorities and to learn more about the entities that are in partnership with the Budget and Finance Committee. Delegate Damon? Dave? Orientation.
Monday.
All week, right?
Well, that's a suggestion, but Historically, how long has the orientation been? Entire week? Yes, Delegate Davis.
I think I would really like to, look to you all schedule first. See, Honorable Lamardo Azar, Honorable Norman MBG, and yourself, Madam Chair, to, prioritize at least 2 of those days that you guys will fully be there to get the orientation of our oversight. And that's like the Controller's Office, Auditor General, and the reason why is because I know that Honorable Slater and Madam Chair Crowdy are relatively privy on that, but, it would be really good, and I'll be there to attend too as well. But I think that what you could do is like 2 solid days on that. Then the other one is, we at the Navajo Nation Legislative Branch have an oversight working together too as well. And that should be tied in there. And then one day should be specifically for, the Navajo Nation investment portfolio.
Okay.
Or at least a whole day. We could spend a whole week on the investment portfolio, but I think as a high-level investment portfolio preview, the Controller's Office working together with our outside consultant, RBK, it could get that. And then I think another day too as well would be specifically just to understand the retirement aspect. The retirement is who we oversee, and the retirement, there's so many different, nuts and bolts in that. And working together with the retirement office, I think the opportunity there is we would need to, understand who they're working with now. The consultant, Tower Watson, would be also an invite, but I think that would be a whole week right there, because the, retirement, investments, our oversight are the individuals that we have, understand, who we're working with. So that would be my recommendation about that. Again, that's only a recommendation.
Thank you, Delegate Damon. And Delegate Azar and Delegate BA, do you have any other comments?
I'm gonna get my copy of my calendar, okay? Let me get my calendar.
Delegate BA?
Friday, maybe Friday, I'm open Friday.
Friday?
I'll be in Phoenix Thursday, okay, so we're done.
I'm not available on Friday.
Yeah. But, I'm available that week, all week, 27th through the 3rd. I think you should just do it. And you can call in and set it up.
Okay.
But I think the reality is commitment is saying, okay, especially for Mr. Azarick, and yourself, Madam Chair, or I think that this is where you really understand who they are, and who we have an oversight.
Let's just have a whole weekend or whatever you want to do.
Okay.
That way, pencil it in and
I'm gonna-
get the race.
I'm gonna take, Delegate Damon's, recommendation to put the first 2 days, Monday, the 27th, Monday, February 27th, and Tuesday, February 28th, as the 2 days we focus on the oversight, offices and divisions and departments that we oversee. On Wednesday, March 1st, we'll focus on the legislative offices, the legislative branch.
Oh, we can move that one. That one's not, that was just something, I don't think we can do that one. You guys already heard from them, right?
Right.
Orientation?
Friday, I can't do nothing.
I'm gonna ask, on March 1st, could we do, are you all interested in the enterprises?
We do enterprises too. We want to do that. And the reason why is because all of us are gonna be appointed as shareholder reps at one point to one of the enterprises.
March 1st? schedule for the enterprise.
No legislation stuff then?
No legislative branch on
Okay.
March first. We're gonna do enterprises on March first.
That's good.
On March second, let's do the investment portfolio.
Okay, first 3 days,
Okay,
first 3 days of,
okay,
so first 3 days, I'll be here all day.
okay,
Friday, I can't do it, I got
okay.
let me see if I can cancel that. First 3 days, and, right off the bat, we have these two right here that we're talking about,
We can tie in the FRS office into one of the first 2 days, even though they're not oversight.
you think we could do that on Monday? First
Yeah.
thing,
We can,
FYI.
we're gonna put FRF on, the first day. On February 27th.
Oh, no, okay. I think that you should really be,
When's our normal, budget finance meeting?
Our next budget and finance meeting will be March 7th.
Regular,
and then on the second would be, what would be that day?
Investment portfolio.
Okay, and then Friday would be retirement?
Retirement day.
Okay, so good.
On the second, is it Nabi?
Nabi's not till the 9th. Nabi's on second and fourth Thursday of the month.
This week is ideal because we don't have budget and finance and we don't have NABI. So,
But I thought.
so now he's on the 9th and 23rd?
Yeah.
16th.
No, it's the second, it's the 9th, the 23rd, because that's the advisor right there.
it's
When is our
on the 9th.
council though? Don't we have a council in there somewhere?
No, we don't have a council till April 17th through the 21st.
That's the only time?
Yeah. Somebody has a
Special.
session. I motion that,
Okay,
or am I holding the motion?
you are holding the motion.
I don't know how this, I'm always confused on this.
So we're
I'm
gonna-
holding
we're
the
gonna be-
motion. Okay, I amend my motion to add that the first 2 days will be the oversight, third day will be the, enterprises, fourth day will be the investment portfolio, and the fifth day will be the retirement. 27th to the 3rd.
Services will be.
Yeah, all of them, insurance services, insurance, auditor
So
general,
it's gonna go through 4 days, right?
Oh,
Friday.
add the auditor general
controller,
to the second day.
OMB, who else is on there? Mona?
The oversight.
Auditor general, OMB, controller.
We'll have a draft schedule sent out to you.
Okay.
Okay.
So the second then, right?
Yeah, so the third is retirement,
Friday,
yeah,
on Friday,
yeah,
we all work all weekend.
yeah.
I won't be here Friday.
We'll have a call in too.
Okay.
So right
And
after,
Thursday, I'll let you know.
yeah, we'll have call in.
Any meetings or anything, I'll be.
Okay, colleagues, I believe the motion party made amendments to, the main motion. And now we,
Oh, he just kind of modified the.
modified the,
So,
yeah,
If
modified,
you guys need to vote on it, you can vote on it. We'll go by the schedule that,
yes. By the schedule, we all
Not
talked.
modified, right?
Yeah. Who's the second? You good with it?
Yes, delegate, he concurs.
Okay.
Okay, could we, call for a vote?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll call, our role tomorrow at 7 vote. Tomorrow, the three, our role of the day has a vote. Great. Our role of the day was three, our role of party has a vote. Our role of the party has a vote.
No.
Our role of the day has a vote.
When on Thursday? Oh, I vote good.
Thank you, our role of the day was three. Madam Chair, we have three members voting to be from Mr. Oakley, manager. One member not voting.
Thank you for the roll call vote, and thank you, colleagues, for the consensus. Item, we're gonna move on to B, under 7, which is scheduling a meeting with the FRF office. Do we have a motion to, for item B, which is scheduling meetings with the FRF office?
Motion.
Delegate Damon motion, do we have a second? Delegate Azar, second? Okay, colleagues, we're gonna open it up for comments and discussion regarding the, meeting with the FRF office. And I have a question. What does your schedules look like? What is, on a normal basis, what days are best for you?
Wednesday afternoon.
Wednesday afternoon.
Yep, you should have a Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock every week.
I concur, that's good with my schedule.
There it is.
Friday.
Yours is Friday?
Friday at 1 o'clock.
I'm okay with Fridays too.
Fridays at 1 o'clock too.
I'm okay. I believe it's good for Delegate.
Yeah.
Tuesday, you wanna have legislation that.
Okay. We'll do,
Fridays?
Fridays at 1.
So this Friday then?
This
The first
Friday, yes, this Friday at 1, we will,
This Friday already?
one? Yeah.
Okay, I'll fill my schedule.
Oh, yeah, I'll be there in the morning though.
What is
I'm
that?
going down here at the Civic Center.
Down here?
Yeah. On Friday at 9.
At 9?
Yeah, at 9.
Then we've got, 45, or?
okay, colleagues. We have modified, I believe, determined a day to meet with the FRF office, which will be Friday, February 24th at 1 p.m. And we will meet here in the Budget and Finance Committee room, and we'll also have the Zoom option available.
It's also every Friday of every week.
Every Friday of every week, yes,
Starting this Friday.
starting this Friday.
All right.
Okay. Thank you for the discussion, and
We
let's,
have the motion, or do we have a vote?
yes, we'll,
That for the conflict with the others, that we can do that on the third?
No.
Can we?
That one we'll miss that week, when then it'll be on the 24th, 10th, 27th, 24th, and 1st. Right, I'm putting it.
Excuse me. Excuse me, this is Delegate Sherilyn.
hello, Delegate Cheryl Yazzie. Yes,
Oh, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm listening in on the call, and I see that you're planning a meeting with Tom Platero on Friday. I have a meeting with him concerning the same thing with my 5 chapters, and that will be Friday the 24th at 10 a.m. He will present for about an hour and a half. He'll be in Greasewood with us that morning. And so I'm hoping it gives him plenty of time to make sure he gets back to your meeting at 1.
thank you, Delegate Yazzie, for the information. Delegate Damon?
Thank you very much, Delegate Yazzie, for that information. So I guess, from this point going forward, we'll have it at 1 o'clock, but this coming Friday, because Azaric has another scheduled meeting at 12:30, I say that this coming Friday, we have our meeting at 2 o'clock.
Okay. Everyone concur?
Yeah, 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock this Friday on the 24th, but from now on. Thank you, Delegate Yazzie, for the information.
o'clock for sure.
2 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock Friday, this Friday, only. 2 o'clock this Friday only.
This Friday only, at 2 o'clock. At the Budget and Finance Committee room.
Right here.
Yes, and there will be a Zoom option. Thank you, colleagues, for the discussion and modification, I believe modification to the main motion. Do you concur? The motion, main motion concurs, so the second concur. Delegate Azaritt? Do you agree? And I'm going to ask, if we could do a roll call vote on the item B.
Yes, Madam Chair, roll call vote on item B. Honorable Lamar, as correctly vote.
Green.
Honorable Lamar, as correctly green. Honorable Norman Lindsay Gay, how do you vote? Honorable Norman Lindsay Gay, was green. Honorable Everton McCarty, how do you vote? Honorable Everton McCarty, how do you vote? Honorable Lindsay, how do you vote?
I vote, green.
Arnold Castellanos votes green. Madam Chair, we have 3 members voting, and we determined that they're opposed to Madam Chair not voting one member. Madam Chair?
Thank you for the roll call vote, and thank you, colleagues. Yes.
This is Delegate Slater.
Oh, hello, Vice Chair Slater.
Hi. I think I caught the end of the discussion, so we're gonna have a meeting at 2 on Friday. And I'll vote green.
Okay. Delegate, Vice Chair Slater votes green on the FRF meeting.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable Carl R. Slater voted green on the consent meeting. Madam Chair, so we have 4 members voting and we determined one member not voting.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Slater. Do you have any other, comments? Vice Chair Slater?
No, I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay,
It looks like you amended the
Delegate-
agenda to only do the report on the procurement code amendments. Did you already do that?
Yes, Delegate Damon amended the agenda so that, 5B and 5C would be moved to the next, meeting's agenda.
And did Ms. Johnson give the presentation today?
Ms. Belowski from the Department of Justice gave the report today, and we did have discussion on the procurement code amendments. The Department of Justice will be providing the Budget and Finance Committee a timeline of the inception of the procurement code and the future, plans that they have, and some of the plans, that the Department of Justice mentioned was that they are having a work session in 2 weeks, and, it was requested that 2 weeks after that work session that they provide a report to Budget and Finance on, the work session on the amendments for the procurement code. That was the main discussion, but we'd be happy to share any of the, documentation that they send over, which I don't believe they have yet.
Thank you, Chair. But I appreciate you and the committee accommodating me this morning.
So I hope you're safe. Thank you, Vice Chair Slater. Delegate Begay?
What you said, something about the Navi, when is this here? Is it on the 9th?
Mr. Rico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Navigation meetings by code are the 2nd and 4th Thursday of every month. So for next month, it will be the 9th and the 23rd.
And then for the April, it's on the,
April is on the 13th and the 27th.
but we usually have a special one.
The special one probably will be on the 20th. Or no. 13th, so you might, depending on.
Usually like 6th and the 13th, right?
Or the 13th, yeah. What's the land on the,
Only, no, on the months that we have, Navajo Nation Council, likes to push, because there's a push to get everything onto the Navajo Nation Council. So they usually have a special Navi on the first Thursday. That's historically, that's how it's been historically.
Thank you, Mr. Rico.
Only if the chair or the speaker wants to do it.
There will be a second Navi on the 27th. You'll update all of these calendars.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm gonna move to item 8, close of session, written announcements. Close of session, do we have any written announcements or announcements for budget and finance? Calling a second time for announcements.
Announcement of my, little brother's, wedding cake.
Thank you, Delegate BK.
Next Saturday's Eastern Agency, meeting at Naizi. I don't know if there's Fort Defiance or any other agencies have announced, but they're on Saturday the 4th. Eastern Agency at Naizi.
That's the other one I wanted to ask.
They don't, their office doesn't do it. It's them out there, the agency council, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, that put that together. And it's up to them. Huh?
10 o'clock?
9 a.m.
Through CDC?
No, they're completely separate, they're an agency, and Ida, don't talk to Ida about it, because she has a headache trying to figure out when the agency council meetings are.
Because everybody has their, in the month of March, right? You know,
Hopefully.
It depends, like.
Oh, really? It depends.
Yeah. That's why I said, is there any other agency, you know, Madam Chair?
Fort Defiance is usually like the end of the month before the council session.
Madam Chair?
April?
Yes?
So theirs will probably be April 1st.
Good morning, this is Shauna Claw. I was listening in to your discussion, and I'm glad that you all asked a question to Ms. Bozelsky regarding the P card as well as the Procurement Act. So those are great discussions that you are all having. We're looking forward to BNF really taking the lead on FRF, and I do feel like the procurement process does need to be streamlined, and I feel like we're going to have a huge backup because we have the 110 chapters that are trying to use the funding. And then as far as NABOA, I think that there are some issues regarding that too. I did see a decrease in their priority 1 listing from 2 years to now. So that's concerning because then it's going to affect like the procurement process as well. But you all asked great questions, and I just wanted to ask our delegate, Mr. Damon, if the Eastern Agency Council is open to everyone. I'd like some information on that. And then I know Central Agency, we do have a Central Agency Council. And then there is discussion about that too, as to the legitimacy of the agency councils. And that was brought before RDC because none of these councils are included into the codes. So we'd like more discussion from RDC and BNF and just to maybe touch on some of those concerns. But I look forward to the work you guys are doing. We support you, all of our colleagues that are on the line. I heard Sherilyn too. Thank you to everyone who attended, and then good job to Chairwoman Parrish, and then to all of our BNF committee members. Thank
you, Honorable Delegate Shauna Claw. Yes, Delegate Damon said that the Eastern Agency Council meeting is open, and it will be at Naizi this week. In person on March 4th. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I'm gonna, go to the next item.
Motion to adjourn.
Delegate Damon, motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Delegate Azar, second. Okay, thank you.
Thursday.
Now
What?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Okay, thank you. We have Navigaskit Committee on Thursday. And let's vote on the adjournment.
Yes, Madam Chair, roll call vote on the adjournment. Honorable Lamar, trustee vote.
Green.
Thank you, Honorable Lamar, trustee Green. Honorable Norton, Day, how do you vote? Thank you, Honorable Norton, Day, was green. Honorable Anderson, Foxley, how do you vote? Honorable Anderson, Foxley, how do you vote? Honorable Seth Damon, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you, Honorable David was green. Honorable Carl Slater, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, Honorable Carl Slater.
Ruling down on behalf of council.
Madam Chair, we have 4 members voting for minutes for opposing. Madam Chair, I will leave that up for Madam Chair.
Thank you, Budget and Finance, for coming together today, and, we wish everybody a excellent Tuesday. The meeting's adjourned at 11:32.
Sometimes if you do it after the fact,